Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 p.m., so I will call the Tuesday, December 16th meeting of the Superior Common Council to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Ledeen.
Here.
Counselor Anderson.
Here.
Counselor Vice President Moffitt.
Here.
Counselor Sweeney. Here. Counselor Fennessy. Here. Counselor Elm.
Here.
Counselor Ludwig.
Here.
Vice President Herrick.
Here.
Counselor Johnson.
Here.
And President Grasky.
We have a quorum.
Item 4.1 is the approval of the December 2nd, 2025 regular council meeting minutes.
Motion is by Counselor Elm, second by Counselor Herrick. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 6.1, report from Mayor Payne.
Good evening again, councilors. I have a few items of business spread throughout the agenda. We had a food security grant roll in, and I'll talk about that under old business, and then the stormwater and wastewater budgets will be our final budgets of the year. There are more to come in the next year, but a lot of those just needed a little bit more work with some changing revenue projections and things. I think Connect Superior is the most significant of them, but the information on that is changing pretty rapidly. So I allowed the finance director to take a little bit more time with that, but nothing should push past January. No springtime budgets in this cycle, but we are more or less done with that budget. So I'll make sure that book is up on the website and released to the public. But again, if anybody wants to see, I think it's already up there. If not, it will be very soon. Unless there are questions, we can move on with the agenda.
Item 7.2 is the business of the Public Works Committee with the meeting held on December 9th. Is there a report from the chair?
Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. Just a few things. Had a committee meeting on December 9th. Great meeting. Packed house for this one. The main topic was the conversation regarding converting one-way to two-way streets on John Ogden Banks. Probably had about a dozen community members show up and speak to that. The overwhelming consensus there was that the community members wanted those streets to stay the same, so committee took no action on that. Other things that you will see for tonight, you will see the lead line ordinance. This will allow us to go onto private citizens' properties for lead lines and get those replaced. Again, no cost to them. You'll also see the lead line contract for LHB for approval. We approved that. There was an approval of 1.5 wetland credits for the Lake Superior apartment project. And then there's a few yearly contracts there that you'll see, whether it was the ice sculptures contract, tire services, landfill, and hazardous waste contract. Lastly, there is a recommendation from the committee to formally accept the Central States Water Environmental Association Award posthumously for Aaron Abramson. So that is my report, and I will leave it for the clerk to call.
Item 7.2.1 is a recommendation to approve an ordinance amending Chapter 114, Utilities, Article 6, Public Water Utility to create Division 3, lead service line replacement.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion is by Councilor Dean, second by Councilor Moffitt. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those.
If I could, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I'd like
Director
to ask
Janico, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to ask for two very small changes to the ordinance. After they were approved by the committee, it was pointed out that there are a couple of small errors. In section 114-205, part A, it says upon notice from the city. It should say upon notice from the city or utility. So we should add the words or utility.
Got that. Okay, why don't you read the second correction?
Okay, the second correction would be in Part D of that same section, and that would say, rather than the city, it should say the utility. And I've gotten a couple of questions about this since I threw that out there. What this is reflecting is that Superior Water and Light, Water Power and Light is required by the DNR to make those notifications. We can still make the notifications, but this will reinforce the idea that the Wisconsin DNR requires them to annually make that, do that survey and contact them by written notice.
Okay, first what I'll do, if everybody understands the corrections, they appear to be minor in scope and within the spirit of the ordinance. So first, on Mr. Janico's behalf, I'm going to request unanimous consent. So I'm going to ask, is there any objection to simply approving those two amendments? Hearing none, both of those amendments are adopted by unanimous consent. So we are now, anything else, Director Janico?
No, thank you.
Thank you. We are on the main motion, the ordinance as amended. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
The second is to approve an engineering service contract with LHB for the 2026 lead service line replacement project in the amount of $1,038,885.
Motion is by Councilor Anderson, second by Councilor Moffett. Second by Councilor Moffett. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 3 is the formal acceptance of the 2025 CSWEA Wisconsin Section Collection Systems Award posthumously awarded to Aaron Abrahamson.
Is there objection to adopting item 7.2.3 by unanimous consent? Hearing none, this is adopted by unanimous consent. I think that's a bit more appropriate. And I want to thank the Public Works leadership for suggesting this idea. These awards, as Councilor Ledeen mentioned, these awards came in after the untimely loss of Ms. Abramson, and she deserved it, and she deserves the recognition for it publicly, and I appreciate them not wanting this to just be received and filed somewhere. So thank you for your support of that, councilors.
Item 4 is to approve a contract with Crystal Clear Ice Sculptures, LLC for the ice sculptures associated with the Lake Superior Ice Festival in the amount of $25,400.
Motion is by Councilor Elm, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 5 is to approve a contract extension with Liberty Tree or Tire Services, LLC for tire recycling in 2026 at the rate of $355 per ton.
Motion to approve.
Motion is by Councilor Dean, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 6 is to approve a contract with Short Elliott Hendrickson for the landfill consultant contract in an amount not to exceed $70,000.
Motion is by Councilor Ledeen, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 7 is to approve a request from Vision Incorporated to purchase up to 1.51 credits from the City of Superior Compensatory Wetland Mitigation Bank.
Motion is by Councilor Elm, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
8 is to approve a renewal of the joint powers agreement with WLSSD for household hazardous waste in the estimated amount of $30,000 per year.
Motion to approve.
Motion is by Councilor Dean, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
And 9 is to approve a cooperative construction and maintenance agreement with the Minnesota Department of Transportation for the ongoing maintenance of the multi-use path on the Blotnick Bridge following reconstruction.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion is by Councilor Moffett, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 7.4 is the business of the Licensing and Fees Committee with a meeting held on December 8th. Is there a report from the chair?
Yeah, there's excuse me. There's two items to approve tonight. They're both I'd say almost more cleanup than anything. The first one is amending the cigarette, tobacco, and electronic vaping device ordinance for to basically prohibit vending machine sales. We really didn't have clarity on this topic in our ordinance, whether tobacco vending machines would be allowed or not. And I think it's important to note that there's no establishments in Superior that have these currently. And so on the heels of some of the recent changes that we've made in ordinance with a goal of limiting the tobacco and vape products or the reach of those specifically to youth, we thought it'd be good and proper to kind of tighten up the current language. So the first item there is basically just prohibiting us from issuing a license for these vending machines that sell tobacco products. And then the second one is because the city now manages the museums, we need to officially adopt the fee structure for if you rent it out Fairlawn for an event or for a wedding or anything like that. And so because the city manages those now, we have to officially adopt the fee structure. Not much changed in the fee structure from what it was prior to now. So both of these were almost just kind of a cleanup.
Unless there are questions for the chair, I will ask the clerk to read the ordinance.
The first is to approve an ordinance amending Chapter 62, Health and Sanitation, Article 1 in general, Section 62.5, cigarette, tobacco, and electronic vaping device retail license to prohibit vending machine sales.
Motion is by Councilor Fennessy, second by Councilor Herrick. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
The second recommendation is to approve a resolution adopting a historic properties admission and rental fee structure.
The motion is by Councilor Herrick, the second by Councilor Fennessy. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 8.1.1 is the business of the Plan Commission with a meeting held on December 10th. Is there a report from the chair?
Yes, most of the business of the Plan Commission, councilors, did not make it to this meeting. We held two small business grants for a few reasons. Namely, one of them in the meeting asked us to increase the amount of the grant, which turned into a fairly complicated question that related to the maximum amounts we give. Well, in that meeting, we were already prepared to discuss the rules and guidelines of the small business program and amend them and for future use. And so because neither of these grants were urgent, they were for Thirsty Pagan Brewing and Saha, they both grant applicants were comfortable waiting at least one meeting to see if we would change those guidelines that would allow them to take advantage of a little more money. As a reminder, that account is fairly flush with a significant balance over and above what we would usually give in any given quarter. So we held those for a month. If you have a passion for either of those organizations, feel free to join at the next meeting and hear all the details. And I don't think any of us on the Plan Commission know how that's going to go. We had a fairly long debate about the Small Business Grant Program, about these grants, about those guidelines. And so nothing is settled, and there's a lot to figure out at the next meeting. And then what you have in front of you, we had another Plan Commission meeting just tonight before the council where we discussed at length the residential portions of the zoning code. I do feel like we're getting quite a bit closer to how that will look, and then at future meetings we'll go into commercial and manufacturing/industrial. A lot of work left, but we're really narrowing it down. So I'd like to thank Councilor Ludwig for joining us there, as well as, of course, the Plan Commissioners. As always, keep an eye out for those meetings. Many of them may be special meetings because they're long and involved conversations, but you're welcome to join them. They actually get pretty fun. They're fairly interesting. We get to talk about neighborhoods. So the only business in front of you tonight is a vacant to value land transfer for to build yet another new house in Billings Park. The program continues to be successful. So I will recommend that, but I'll ask the clerk to read it.
That is to approve waiving land sale procedures for city-owned property located at 2027 Elmira Avenue, and that city staff be allowed to execute the transfer by quitclaim deed immediately to New York Avenue properties as outlined in the vacant value new construction program.
The motion is by Counselor Grasky, the second by Counselor Moffett. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Old business 9.1 is a food insecurity program report.
There's a report in front of you, Councilors. We received 3 applications since the last meeting. The one that I'm recommending is clearly qualified, meets the goals of the program, and is consistent with the previous grants that you and I had authorized. So that I'm comfortable recommending that. There were 2 others that I thought fairly clearly did not meet the requirements of the program, and that they did not serve superior institutions, or we could not firmly establish that it was a nonprofit capable of executing the grant. So I did not recommend those, and I did not include them on the agenda. And so this is our last opportunity to spend this money. I believe a fairly significant amount will come back to the Economic Development Fund, even if you approve this grant. So I can answer questions or entertain motions to approve. The motion is by Councilor Grasky, the second by Councilor Moffett, to approve a food insecurity grant to Zion Lutheran Church. Discussion. Councilor Sweeney.
Is this grant for 1 year,
Uh,
or is it till they use the amount of money?
It's a cash award. I'm not aware that there are restrictions on it, other than they have to, we collect receipts for how they spent it. So, I'm sorry, Becky would answer this a little bit better than I would, but I believe it's generally done on a reimbursement basis. So if they didn't submit receipts within a year, I'm very unlikely to release it, but I'd probably have to bring it back to council.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the grant, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 10.1 is approving miscellaneous licenses pending department approvals.
Motion is by Councilor Grasky, second by Councilor Moffett. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 10.2 is an original Class A beer and Class C liquor wine-only license application for WIC Store Incorporated, doing business as WIC Store located at 311 Belknap Street for the current license period through June 30th, 2026, pending police, health, and fire department approvals.
The motion is by Councilor Fennessy, second by Councilor Moffett. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
10.3 is an original cigarette, tobacco, and electronic vaping device retail license application for WIC Store at 311 Belknap Street for the over-the-counter sales of cigarettes, tobacco products, and electronic vaping devices for the current license period through June 30th, 2026, pending department approvals.
The motion is by Councilor Fennessy, the second by Councilor Johnson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 10.4, election inspector nominations and roster for the 2026 to 2027 election cycle.
The motion is by Councilor Herrick, second by Councilor Elm. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 10.5, confirm Wesley Van as Environmental Services Division Operations and Maintenance Supervisor with an effective date retroactive to December the 1st.
The motion is by Councilor Herrick, second by Councilor Moffett. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
10.6 is the 2026 stormwater and wastewater budgets.
The motion is by Councilor Herrick, second by Councilor Moffett. Councilors, just a very brief overview on this. As I've mentioned at previous meetings, these should be relatively non-controversial budgets, and that is because these are 2026 budgets. As you look through these, they look like 5-year budgets, like capital improvement plans, and they do contain significant projections, and that's because they have cash balances. They are enterprise funds. And so we have to make some accounting for the health of that fund going into the future. So you'll notice obviously there's no ordinance attached, so we're not proposing any fee increases for 2026. And if you look at the bottom of the year 2026, the funds are quite healthy all the way through next year and for the next few years. What I want to point out, though, is they don't stay that way forever. We are starting to finally see deficits appear as expenses outpace our revenues. The fee has been stable. In fact, in the case of wastewater, we lowered it. At some point, inflation will overwhelm the fee's ability to meet our expenses. We can, and I believe should, draw down those funds to a certain degree, but at some point choices will need to be made. The reason you don't see me suggesting anything right now, and why I still believe these are so non-controversial they can come right to council rather than a more extended conversation in finance or public works, is because you don't see those significant deficits until really the year 2030, and there are many other factors that could really influence it that we just don't know yet. And so I think we've got the time to see how these years play out, especially in the case of wastewater where you see the much larger deficits in the future. There's a lot of potential revenue that could come in from things like the Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund. And I would like a few more years to assess just how the revenue and expenses are actually shaking out, because we make very conservative projections. They don't always play out that way in real life. In fact, they rarely do. So that's not to say that these projections are wildly off. If things basically stay status quo, we're going to need to start finding either need to find new revenue or significantly reduce or delay our capital expenditures. Again, this is a 2030s problem. It is not a last meeting before Christmas 2025 problem. I want you to know that so you know I'm not trying to rush this past you. This is what we will be working on in the coming years. But these are healthy, stable funds for 2026. So, can I answer any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting both budgets for 2026, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Item 10.
I'm sorry, Councilor Ledeen, did you have a question? No. Okay.
10.7 is the ERP and HRIS vendor selection and implementation oversight contract approval.
There's a motion by Councilor Grasky and a second by Councilor Moffett. Councilor Herrick.
Yeah, can we get some narrative from
Yes, Director Reinhardt.
Director
has
Reinhardt? Yeah, thank you.
come in just for this.
Good evening, City Councilors. I first want to apologize for throwing this on the agenda last minute. I realized that this was kind of a rushed thing, but I can guarantee the process wasn't quite as rushed as we've been putting this together. So, just to give you a little background on this, the city started exploring new ERP systems starting in about 2023 is when we started this whole process. As we kind of dove
I'm
into
sorry, Director Reinhardt, can you start with what is an ERP system?
Oh, sorry. ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. Basically a fancy word for accounting software. And then HRIS is the human resource side of that. So there's kind of two sides that we're looking at. Some vendors combine them all into one, and they call it one big ERP. In this option, we decided to split them out. Kind of jump back to the beginning of that. So we started looking into this process. We decided we needed some help. So we hired Barry Dunn to be our consultant to kind of do a needs assessment, look at what we have, and work through that process. That kind of was in 3 different stages. They looked at the current state of what our accounting software is, how we're using it. We looked at what we want our software to be, kind of what they call our target state. That was phase 2. And then phase 3 was actually going out, creating the bids, and receiving proposals back. Throughout that step 3 is kind of the big important one here, probably the longest one here too. So we developed a team of about 6 people to do the reviewing, 3 from HR, 2 from payroll, and 1 from IT, where our first step was just reviewing the proposals. I think each proposal, so we received 10 proposals. I think each proposal took us about 4 to 6 hours each to read from start to finish. They were pretty big books if anyone saw them in my office. We did that. We did an assessment on those, and that's how we came to our short list. From our short list, we did demos of these vendors. The demos were 3 days each, 2.5 days each. So where we actually sat down, the vendors had to prove that our processes that we defined within the earlier stages actually fit within that software. Then we made our assessment based on that to kind of come to these final choices. The process took about a year to get through that. As kind of a wrap, as we started looking at contracts and stuff, when Frog and I were reviewing these contracts, we decided to seek outside counsel to review these contracts as well. So we retained Safford Rosenbaum, and they also reviewed these contracts. And we had some, initial things that were different. Overall, the review didn't come in anything too drastic, but it did delay the project. We would have liked to seen this go to CIT, but just kind of due to the way things that happened and the timing of it, it got pushed back a little bit. So the third contract on here is not the ERP accounting software or the HRS, the accounting software. It's keeping Barry Dunn for implementation services. And I realize that this seems like sort of an expensive contract just to have somebody overview the project. Let me dive into that a little bit. So Barry Dunn helped us. They're well familiar with this project. They've been there start to finish with us. They've worked with these vendors. They have the experience. So basically, what are they doing is kind of the question. So when we're looking at like hours, employee hours to what it's going to take just for an employee to take on an additional role, we're already expecting an additional 20 plus hours a week per employee. That includes subject matter experts, people leading the projects, team leads. It's an exhaustive process. This is going to be, I don't want to say burdensome on the city, but it is going to be a large hill to climb. One of the things Barry Dunn gives us is they provide us with expertise. They provide us with leadership. They're going to jump in and be the project leaders on this, deal with any communication issues we're having through the ERP or through Oracle and UKG, and really dive into some of those bigger issues that we may not understand. They're going to track those contract deliverables from start to finish, where I may miss something within those contract deliverables. They may catch something and say, don't sign off on that. We don't believe this process is complete. Where that gets really important is when we're changing over data to the new system, because we want to make sure that process is very accurate. User acceptance training, we want to make sure we all are accepting our training at the city, so we have very successful go lives. And then the other big piece of that, sorry, my thoughts are a little scattered today. But I believe that that's going to be an invaluable service. I do have Ryan Doyle. He's the principal from Barry Dunn. I don't know if he wants to add something to what I'm going to say here. Some examples maybe. We talked to some other municipalities too and got some feedback on this, and almost everyone said the service was invaluable for them.
Before I invite Mr. Dunn to speak, are there questions from the council? Councilor Sweeney.
My question is, if we run into a problem that says, the contractor says, we did not talk about doing X in the contract. The city says, we think you did. And so we have call it an extra, call it something. I know we've run into this before, so I applaud you for getting, I don't know who Barry Dunn is, but I assume he's good. And so that's the critical component that we seem to run into sometimes on these projects. Somebody will say, well, you didn't, we wanted 10 widgets, and he said, well, it doesn't say that. And so we get involved in these discussions, and the last couple I recall the city cost us some money because we were wrong. Okay, it didn't say X. Okay, so that's what I applaud you for. And I just want to make sure that we've got all the T's crossed and the I's dotted before we get involved in this, because There will probably be some minor problems, I get that, but no, we don't want any major problems. We don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars above and beyond what we think we're going to spend.
And to add to that, the extra review by Stafford Rosenbaum was largely meant to protect us against some of the problems we've had with contracts in the past.
Yeah, the biggest thing with that is, you know, they are, specifically the person we looked at, they were in IT contracting. There were a couple of really big issues that I pointed out to them that I was concerned about. I wanted to make sure that if something happens with this vendor, whether, you know, it's a year from now or 15 years from now, retention of data, our work that we've done is very important, and how we get that data back in a clean and organized way so that we could, you know, hopefully never have to do this again as long as I'm here. But just in case for the next person, that was one of the big protections. The other one, and I won't lie, there was some give and takes in these contract negotiations, and I think that's how every contract negotiation goes. But making sure that what was in their proposal, and their proposals, they had this big technical spec section where basically they had three options, whether they could do it, whether it was coming in the future, or whether they were going to have a third party do it. It was about 30 pages of just them saying yes and explaining that. For one vendor, we tried to have that as a direct exhibit within the contract, and they turned that down. But as a compromise to that, we actually held 10% retainage from them until the project's completed. So we did some protections in some way. It's the best we could. And some we didn't quite get there, but that's okay. That's the whole point of contract negotiations as well. I think overall, though, I mean, from what I've seen in other contracts similar to this, I think we've done the steps we can to protect ourselves.
Councilor Herrick.
Yeah, just a couple questions. As far as going to the Barry Dunn, as far as waiving the formal bidding requirements for this, is it safe to say that that particular fee is in line with others?
Yes, so I believe that when we went out to bid for originally the ERP consulting, we received 6 bids or something like that, and as part of their proposals, we did request that. And from what we were seeing for price ranges compared to other bidders, it was in the realm of possibility. Some did it a little differently than others, where they put some of those fees more towards. They just did it a little differently. But I thought their price quote is in line with what we saw from the others in the industry. And absolutely, you know, could the city go out for a bid on this? I think yes, the city could, you know. And I can completely understand where the councilors may have hesitation with that agreement and say, that's a lot of money. It is, but we're also taking the people who are most familiar with the city in this project and keeping them along for the project versus starting new.
Okay, and then one other question. For example, the Oracle NetSuite for government contract. Okay, and there it lists certain things that they'll, I guess, educate the staff on. For example, I don't have the particular area, but for example, they're saying that would take an hour and a half. Okay, if it takes longer than an hour and a half, is there additional fees after that hour and a half? Or are these fees, or is this particular time frame established because of past experience with this company?
So they're based on their past experience of what the training is going to take. Part of, you know, this is a great example of why we have Barry Dunn along with it. You know, let's say Barry Dunn's supervising these trainings with us. We get our hour and a half training. Barry Dunn looks at it and say, this was completely inadequate to accomplish the goals you need to have. We have those people in our corner backing us up, you know, to protect us against things like that or try to fight for us and things like that. Well, you estimated, and maybe it's a compromise. You said, hey, this training module is going to take 7 hours. It took 4. Now, can we just take that time and reallocate it there? You know, there we got protections and cost savings versus them just saying, well, this is really going to cost you 3 hours, which is going to be another $30,000.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Elm.
Director, thank you. Thanks for talking with me earlier today. I'm a little disappointed that this did come out last night, but I do appreciate the time that we had today explaining this, because I know how software companies can work and how sometimes things can slip past. So it's really important to have someone on our side to make that migration work well. But could you explain like the timeline of this? This is here tonight. This is like what, a 12-month process. So the intent is, if approved tonight, we would be up and running with this new software in 2027. What are the problems that we would see if we don't approve this tonight? Could you give some more perspective on that?
Sure. So the two things I see are just mostly timeline for this project. So we're trying to shoot for there's two parts to this. So there's the human resource part, which the go live date's actually going to be third quarter of 2026. So we still may see the HR side go live within the next year. That would be October 1st. And then the accounting side would be 1/1/2027. The idea behind this is two things. One, we really enjoy that staggered start. We don't want these projects going live at both times together. Pushing this timeline back is going to push UKG back a year, and that's a little bit troublesome as trying to go live with both those pieces in a month. So basically what would happen is we'd probably push the whole process back a whole quarter in doing so by delaying the approval of these. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but honestly I wouldn't have put these contracts forward if I didn't feel like, you know, us and the city staff didn't do our due diligence to make sure these were ready to go tonight. We seek the outside counsel. We hired the contractor to help us review this. We've spent months and months reviewing this. From just my perspective, and I'm sure the other department heads that were involved with this, you know, we feel this is ready, and that's why we kind of sent it forward. I'm not sure, at least, you know, from our side, I'm not sure on the counselor side, that we can accomplish any more with this with more time on our plate.
No, you really have done your homework. I know many other times we've just worked directly with the software company, and we hit those road bumps along the way, but having Barry Dunn in our corner initially has really helped out, I would say. Old data, how far back are we migrating data from?
So there's still a little bit being explored there. I believe it's 5 years per the proposal on the accounting side. It gets a little different too with what specific data you're talking about. I mean, like when you're looking at vendor history, for example, I'm not going to keep a vendor who hasn't been paid in 10 years in our system. It's just not worth the it's just messy. So different data types have kind of different requirements for some of that. Moving this data is very expensive. The data A from this system is never going to agree with system B. They just don't match up very well. The more data you want to move, the more time, the more money you have. And probably the data moving itself is the most expensive part of this. Would I love my system to go back to 1998? Absolutely would. That'd be wonderful. I just think from a realistic side, it can't happen. 5 years doesn't sound like much. That's about all we ever look at from a council or budgeting side is that 5-year span. The other option we're kind of looking at too yet, and we're kind of exploring some additional options for this, is how can we retain that data in a different way? And we're looking at doing some data warehousing possibly, where it makes that data accessible in a different way. And then on top of that, we're looking at even a third way, where we currently utilize the pivot tables pretty excessively to organize our data. So we're actually just talking about moving our data to those pivot tables and just having not a very large pivot table, but multiple pivot tables by years that we can look at.
That's great. I just wanted to make sure we're not double paying for multiple years to have the old system running. So there would be an intent to shut the old system down at the end of 2026 if all goes smoothly, right?
We would shut the old system right down.
Very good. One of the other things here was we talked on the phone earlier about it's kind of the comparisons of pricing, like landing on Oracle and the HR software, that they weren't the most expensive. There was far more expensive options, and the ongoing costs of this is similar to what we're paying now. And to have accomplished that, I think, is quite a feat. So could you talk a little bit about that to give a little more perspective?
I actually ran the numbers right before this meeting So in total, our current system's costing us about $159,000 a year. The combination of these two systems, at least in the first year, is going to be $157,000. So we're actually going to see about, I don't know, $1,500 in cost savings. I think that's pretty impressive when we're talking about just the sheer power that these new systems have compared to the old systems. I know AI is kind of a buzzword, and it's what a lot of these vendors are currently pushing when you talk to them. But it's really cool what some of that technology is doing. Looking for patterns and trends in your budgeting, using bank reconciliation features where it's looking at your bank account, searching through your entire account activity and making, reasonable analysis. With generative AI, especially in these systems, when you start talking financial reports, you're not working with a hard report builder anymore. You're typing in, I want this report that has this, automatically AI generation. Now, are these systems, 100% there with this yet? I don't think so, and it's still something that's coming along the process. Of the vendors we looked at, though, I think Oracle's probably one of the furthest along. Our system, the old AS400, big old green screen that you kind of see, a big old DOS pad, it's never going to do that. I don't care how much money they invest in that software. It's going to sunlight here eventually. Whether it's a year, whether it's 5 years, I don't know. I don't want to be there when it happens, though, because we're already seeing, those kind of things going away. One of the big ones is no tax on overtime has kind of come out now, and we're very disappointed in the software vendor with the way they're handling that. They're like, oh, you can just do this workaround. We're tired of workarounds.
And one last question. I don't know if Barry Dunn wants to add kind of their value. I think that is an important piece. But the backup and retention, I know there's defaults and backups, and folks assure you that that data doesn't disappear, but sometimes there's a whoopsie and it does. Are we just having default retention that comes with NetSuite, or are we getting anything additional beyond the standard retention?
Yeah, it's one of the big things we looked at during the proposals, and maybe Ryan does want to chime in on it because my brain's probably a little fuzzy because it's been a long time since I looked at that. But, it's all cloud-hosted data on specific clouds. And I want to say that did kind of play into our choices a little bit when you're looking at that, because you're looking at the way they're using certain technologies, looking at how their data is being housed. Now, Oracle itself has the Oracle Cloud. It's their own built purpose cloud. Oracle, more money than God. I feel like our data is probably going to be pretty safe there. I remember they had quite a few redundancies with how they were doing their backups. And UKG was, I want to say, Amazon Web Services. Again, another very protected cloud. Brian, do you have any comments on that?
I know that it's pretty standard, the language that comes along in these types of agreements for cloud hosting, just in terms of what we like to call failover sites, right? So if there's a disaster at one hosting site, what happens? Does the city's network, does the city's connection go down? Does their system go down, or does it fail over to another site? I recall that through the evaluation process, it was identified both vendors had hot sites that would spin back up, so that way, the instances of the software would be replicated at backup data centers. So I could certainly go back and look off to the side for that, but I do recall that through the evaluation process.
No, I'm sure that's in place. I was just like, if an employee deleted a piece of data and the retention, if we needed to find that piece of deleted data after 6 months, could you get back that piece of information in recovery of that? If all systems were operational, it's just more of an accidental issue.
Yes, they should have, both systems, I believe, have rollback points that they could go to. It would probably be an extreme of something we would do, because it's something we don't like to do, because once you start looking at rollbacks, you lose future data? I mean, sometimes there are ways to pull that data, and I'm sure, I feel pretty positive that Oracle and UKG probably have a much more positive way to do it than anything else. The other thing I'll bring up along with that point too, though, is in our accounting softwares, we have this thing called audit trails. We can, within our current system, we have that. It's not very robust. Within these new software, the audit trails are super robust. I can see almost dang near every click people do in that system and see what changes they did, what they shouldn't have done, stuff they were accessing that maybe they shouldn't have been accessing. That's a level of control that we've never had at the city before, and that's going to be invaluable when you're talking and looking through stuff like that. Hey, why did you delete this file? Here's your name on it. I saw that you did this. A, we have to recover that file, and then B, we have to follow through on why that data was gone. We don't have that kind of outlook right now.
Thanks for all the questions. Sorry for the rest of the council for enduring that, but I don't know if Barry Dunn wanted to kind of elaborate on their value, because we're paying for implementation at Oracle and we're doing it at Barry Dunn. So maybe a little clarity on that would be great for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to join tonight via Teams. Hopefully you all can hear me well before I dive in. If I could just get a head nod, perhaps, or
Yes, we can hear you.
verbal confirmation. Excellent. Wonderful. Well, Ryan Doyle, I'm a principal here with Barry Dunn. My firm is an independent and objective consulting services firm. I think that's important to identify because we don't have any ties or partnerships or affiliations with hardware or software vendors in the marketplace. Why is that important? Because we always act with the best interests of our clients, first and foremost in the mind as we approach these types of projects. My firm and my team, we've worked with over 600 local governments across the United States and are actively managing on behalf of clients probably in the realm of 3 to 4 dozen similar projects right now, ranging from organizations much smaller than the City of Superior to those that are much larger in terms of both staff count as well as population base. So we've seen a wide range of ERP implementations. And before I dive into a little bit of the value, I'd just like to commend Nick and the rest of the city team as well. I think he's underselling a bit the amount of diligence that the city team has done and the amount of hours. 4 to 6 hours would be very conservative in how long they spent reviewing each proposal. The city team did spend about the last 7 months reviewing these proposals to make sure that an informed decision was made related to the software products that they're selecting. So a little bit about how our role fits in relative to the other vendors and the city team as well is we ultimately act as an extension of the city during the implementation process. So there's an expectation of both UKG and Oracle NetSuite that the city has a full-time project manager who is responsible as serving as the main conduit for the project. That is, in most circumstances, about 30 to 40 hours per week during an implementation. And put plainly, the city team has recurring day jobs to do on top of an implementation. There are critical things that need to happen throughout the course of the year, whether it be benefit open enrollment, doing quarter-end closes, month-end closes, fiscal year rollover, or simply processing AP vouchers. One of the advantages of having our team involved during the implementation is the support through the project in terms of managing to the project and the vendors that are involved. There was a question one counselor had about what happens if a vendor says we have an hour and a half for training and it doesn't go well or we need more training. Well, part of our role and responsibility is to make certain that the city team knows what needs to be done before that training occurs, make sure they know their homework items and how to prep for the session and what to expect, make sure the vendors aligned appropriately to maximize the use of that hour and a half so that there isn't the need to go back and say that was not sufficient. And so always looking towards a forward perspective on the project to make certain that the tasks are well known and organized and making certain that the city team can make the highest and best use of their time in planning for managing day-to-day responsibilities as well as project tasks. One of the unfortunate things that can happen during a project such as this is that folks start to get bogged down with chasing down emails or worrying about scheduling meetings or reviewing deliverables, and And ultimately, you start to see some quality slip. And that is ultimately what Nick and the team has identified as what they're looking for our team to support with. That contract management question as well is another area where our team was involved in helping to negotiate the contract, looking at it from a scope process. We were alongside the city and helping to plan for and attending those vendor demonstrations over those 3 weeks earlier this summer. And we have that legacy knowledge of the process that was used, the discussions that were had, and are fully equipped to manage to the contract and assist the city and really lead the city through the reviewing of vendor deliverables and making sure as well that the vendors aren't skipping over tasks that were included or scope that was included in their contracts, really helping to ensure the vendor accountability throughout the course of the implementation. One of the things that we intend to do with a project such as this is bring a team approach as well, and this allows for varying perspectives in terms of thinking about how to address any questions that come up, any challenges, and how to get out in front of any risks or potential issues. So that way we minimize the impact to the project schedule and to the project budget both. We recently had to do this with a client that had to go live in July of this year where they were nearly 12 months into their HR payroll implementation, and it looked as though the project was trending red as we headed into the final weeks leading up to go live because life happens and we had certain individuals that were out on leave on the client team and the vendor team both, and we had to come up with contingency plans. So we proactively pulled together a contingency plan that brought forth different alternatives of how to proceed forward in that scenario and escalated that to speak with our client and their executive sponsorship team to figure out what steps can we take to make sure that this project stays on track and hits the target milestones. Fortunately, we were able to keep that on track, maintain a July 1st go live, and the client was able to begin processing payroll effective on the date that they had initially set out to do. To be certain, these projects are never easy. We always like to say if these projects were easy, then our firm wouldn't be in the business of providing project management services for these types of projects. They're large, they're complex, but we also know that we need to maintain flexibility in the approach and scale to meet the city and the project needs where they are. We've proposed a time and materials basis for this engagement based on our best estimates this time of how much effort might be needed and based on our knowledge of the city staff and where the needs might most benefit the project team. So that being said, we only bill for the actual services incurred, and we're very mindful to keep an eye on those hours throughout the course of a month and proactively have the discussion with the client. If it looks as though we're being asked to do more in certain areas, we want to make sure we have the authorization from the city so that way we're managing to the project budget as a whole. So certainly as the project gets underway, if it seems as though we can scale back in certain areas, we've had the conversations with Nick that our firm will be prepared to discuss where those areas are and what the potential pros and cons are and make sure that we're load balancing for resources at the city appropriately as well, so as not to put undue burden on city staff's shoulders during the implementation process.
Thank you.
Be happy to answer any follow-up questions as well.
Are there any further questions or discussion?
Just a couple comments I want to piggyback off of what Ryan said too. One thing he talked about is preparing the city staff for the training, preparing them for the deliverable items. I think in some of our previous engagements where we've engaged with software companies, I think it's been one of our biggest downfalls too is software company expects us to do X. We don't entirely understand what X is. It comes to that day, and then we get blown off a little bit because we weren't prepared. Software company doesn't know how to guide us through it any better because they're a software company, and then we aren't producing the best product. It's extremely disappointing when it happens, especially when you have this amazing, robust software and you're not fully utilizing it because you don't know how to fully utilize it or how to prepare to successfully utilize it. The other kind of item I wanted to bring up is, do I feel confident that I could get through this at the end of the day by myself? Sure, I do. But my other thought in this whole process is I've been about finance director for 3 years, and I feel like we're finally getting the finance department in a place that it's running successfully. I think our last year of budgets has been the most successful we've ever produced. I think when you start looking at the general accounting in our books, it's the best it's been in the last few years. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of hard work from our team. I would hate to have this set back because my attention can't be vested on that of which I was hired for.
Questions or discussion? Councilor Fennessy.
Yeah, just a couple specific questions. So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's about $590,000 for the software between the two of them, and then $462,000 for the consultant.
Correct. For the implementation of the softwares. So the softwares still have annual fees that go along with them. Annual fees, I think in the first couple years totaled to $158,000 for both softwares.
Say that again?
So there's kind of two parts to this. The part we're looking with these contracts to approve budget-wise and stuff is just the implementation fees, us getting these softwares upward and going. And then moving forward, annually, we still have, our service agreements and hosting fees and things like that.
With like Oracle and that?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, no.
Their Barry Dunn contract is just going to be a one-time contract for implementation.
Okay. Am I just naive in thinking that if we spend $500,000 and almost $600,000 on software, that we shouldn't need to also spend almost that exact amount on the consulting to implement it? Am I just that out of touch with like software in general?
What we're trying to protect ourselves with Barry Dunn is what we don't know. So to give you kind of an example of a project that I specifically worked on, we were migrating our website from a Shopify website to a more extravagant website. Overall, the implementation was about $80,000, which didn't seem like a lot of time. But one thing we were very adamant about when we were doing sales calls and stuff was we wanted to integrate with our accounting software. When it came to that, the company kind of floundered, said that wasn't in our contract, and that was going to cost us an additional $30,000. We paid that. We almost doubled the cost of our project for something that their salespeople said they could promise, and it got left out of the contract essentially at the end of the day. Those are the kind of flounders we're trying to avoid here, ones that I may miss. And when we're talking about a $500,000 software, doubling that to 700, possibly having a fee of $100,000 on some kind of implementation we miss with the contract could be really devastating to this project.
Implementing software of this scale, I'm trying to not answer your question with a yes. But implementing software to this scale is significantly more complex than a major construction project. And we would hire construction managers for any major construction project we did earlier tonight. So I think it's
hard to compare it to a road. We're working in one specific area and one specific thing. From a city side on this project, this is something that almost every employee's hand is going to touch, possibly including yours. We're hoping to open up access to counselors and give them more financial transparency in the system. And the hopes, by having Barry Dunn as kind of the project manager on this is, sure, maybe we go live, we fumble a bunch. We're trying to set it up in a way where we're not fumbling a bunch. I'm trying to set it up in a way where all the employees they're there, they're ready to go. We've given this the best opportunity we could.
No,
it's a lot of money. I hear you.
Yeah, and I think and it's not even we need to hire a consultant for this that's throwing me off. It'd be, to go to your example, Mayor Payne, it'd be like having a $2 million road project and hiring an additional $2 million project manager for it. It just it just strikes me as odd that we're spending. It's less, but almost in the ballpark of how much we're spending on the software we're spending on the consultant for implementation, and then we're not going to put it out for bid is where it kind of hangs. That's where I get kind of hung up here, because in the bid between Oracle and UKG, there's the set amount and then there's the 10% contingency, and I would assume the 10% contingency would be the items that you said, the $30,000 for we forgot to include this in our contract, or, something like that. Wouldn't that be what the contingency is for?
God, I hope we don't have to touch a contingency with this project.
But I mean, is that what it's for?
I mean, it's to help us to avoid things like that. It's to help us to avoid, things getting. I think Ryan's example is the greatest, where they're preparing us to get ready for this training meeting and setting the expectations we need. I don't feel Oracle's going to do that. And then when staff come into that training, we get bad training for that hour and a half. The city struggles to hold Oracle accountable that we got bad training. They said, look, we delivered. You did your hour and a half of training. Whether you got it or not, that's on you. We completed our contractual liability.
So, I mean, Oracle's a giant, software company. Do they have a history of over-promising and under-delivering? And if the answer is yes to that, then what are we doing here?
Well, I think project implementation is its own service, and not to overstress this metaphor, but earlier in this meeting we approved about $1 million for lead line replacement. Half of that was designing, the other half was overseeing the implementation of that design. It was about half and half. So that is quite common in construction. That's what this is. This is, maybe I'm overstraining the metaphor, but the software itself, our staff are not meaningfully prepared to spend a significant amount of time adjusting their work and training themselves to convert our existing system to the new system. That's what I felt Barry Dunn was explaining here a minute ago.
We are not software project managers. I'm a finance director. My focus is accounting. Barry Dunn, this is where their bread and butter is knowing software consulting, understanding how to work with these vendors, understanding how to guide entire cities to successfully implement this. I'm not saying it's something that, could I get through it? Could I fumble through it? Could I do this? Yes. The city finances, though, are probably going to very much struggle within that section of time, without even considering, the possibility of probably having a whole interim finance director.
No, and I get that, because I know this is a massive undertaking. It's going to be a massive ask of the staff to do this in addition, to learn this new system in addition to their job that remains the same workflow as it did before we implemented this new system. So I certainly want to put them in the best place that they can succeed and that they can learn this as fast as possible. I guess I'm still just stuck on that, how much this is going to cost to implement this software. And the reasoning that I've heard is just in case there was something missing in the contract. Well, we hired an outside attorney to make sure that didn't happen, to make sure that if they say it's an hour and a half training, that we get an hour and a half worth of training. And I guess I'll ask you again, does Oracle have a history of over-promising and under-delivering on their training, where we would truly need a outside consultant to basically slap the hand of Oracle and say, you get back and do this training session again?
Ryan, do you have any real life examples of something that would come through like that? I'll open it up to you can do any of the vendors on our proposal, because they're all about equal size to Oracle. I would think so.
Sure, and I'll answer the counselor's question most directly. To my knowledge, and from what we've seen in the marketplace, the answer is no. We have not seen them routinely fall on their face. What I think is important to identify is it's a lot more than just managing to the contract to keep the vendor on track for training. The process of the implementation really is a business transformation project that's fueled by technology, right? Technology is the impetus for the change. The city identified that there's a need to move away from the current ERP solution towards a new solution, but there's been a heavy emphasis from the city project team that this is not simply a lift and shift. the amount of analysis and decision making and configuration that goes into before even learning how to use the system is quite immense. And one of the things that needs to be focused on during the implementation process is the people side of change as well. So we're not just replicating if we have business processes today that are not optimized for back office or public facing operations, then that really needs to be looked at with a critical eye. And that's part of our role during the implementation process, is to challenge the city participants as well as the vendors to say, is this the best way to be doing things? Is there a better way to be configuring the system before we even get to the testing and training of the system? The decisions of, if we click here, then X, Y, Z will occur. So it's really focused on not just participating and attending the vendor solutions, through which we'll be in all the meetings just alongside the city for all those testings and trainings and analysis, but the work effort where it extends beyond what the software vendors do is having those sessions with Nick to sit down and work through the configuration workbooks and make decisions to make certain that we're meeting those timelines internally such that the project does stay on track as a whole. So the work effort goes beyond just simply vendor contract compliance, but it's managing to the risks and issues on the project, the decision points, making sure that we have the right stakeholders engaged and involved, making sure that we're keeping track of the tasks, of which there will be thousands of tasks that are laid out in that project plan on a recurring basis. Certainly in looking at the vendor's pricing as well, and looking at the fee sensitivity of the city, we've reduced our hourly rates by approximately 25% as well for this project, and we're pleased to do that in showing our strength of partnership with the city and commitment to the success of the project as well.
And I want to piggyback on what Ryan's saying there a little bit. So when we're talking about configuration, possibly changing charts of accounts, things like that, when we looked at our proposals in particular, they defined these elements to us. This is what your team's doing. This is what our team's doing. Configuring the software, configuring flows in the software, who approves what, when they approve what. Oracle doesn't give me those answers. I have to define those answers. This is within our policy what's supposed to happen. We need to make that happen in the system. Data migration, another really big task. We get basically, here's what the data needs to look like. You need to do that transformation of the data. We'll help you clean it up a little bit, but ultimately a lot of those duties fall on the city. So it's not just as simple as I go to Oracle, say here's my current system, here's your system. They look at us for a lot of things, a lot of configuration, and making really big decisions that affect the whole city on that.
Is there, like, I know you guys have done an immense amount of work on this, with the, like, I have no hesitation with the Oracle or the UKG, and I don't even have any hesitation with the Barry Dunn necessarily. It's, I don't want to use your own words against you, Nick, but you said that we want to keep the people who are most familiar with the city. I would rather have us hire the people who are most familiar with the software. And that might be Barry Dunn, but that might be somebody else, and we're not going to know that unless we put this out for bid to make sure that we're getting a fair shake on this. And it just seems to me like just a tremendous cost. And I know the implementation can be super time consuming. It's just, I mean, we could hire, if this $462,000 is for 2 years. We could hire 2 people at a very good wage to be here for 40 hours a week each, and maybe that's the option. We got this yesterday in the amended agenda packet. I know you guys have been working on this. I guess I'll ask: is there a way to split these up to move forward with the 2? And I'd like to see us put this out for bid for the Barry Dunn, or at least. At a minimum, table this until the next meeting when we have more time than 24 hours to look through this.
That would be a motion to divide. I was looking up if that can be, if that's privileged or not, which I'm fairly certain it is. I believe that's divided automatically. Is that your request to divide this specific contract, the Barry Dunn contract?
Yeah, that would.
Okay. I'm going to consider that a privileged motion that must be granted. So there's a motion to consider, a motion to approve all three. Therefore, with that divided, we'll deal with that separately. And we are considering the ERP and the HRIS vendor contracts only now. Further discussion or questions on those? Councilor Sweeney.
I'm consistent in this. I'm a big believer in hiring people who are experts on the outside. And Nick, I heard you say, could you do this on your own? You verbalized you were quite confident that you could, okay? And I don't doubt that you could. But every time you make a contract, you have to have a goal, and the goal has to have a time frame. You have to be able to finish it. You both alluded to that. You have a full-time job right now. Would you agree with that? Okay. And so now this is a big project, maybe one of the biggest ones we're going to have. And not now Barry Dunn, you recommended him. I don't know Barry Dunn, but I'm a strong believer in getting an outside expert, okay? And I think you've done your homework. You claim they're experts. I would like to ask gentlemen some questions. My concern is with the depth and longevity of their management team, okay? Whoever it is. And you may have gone through that with them, and you may have asked them all that, and that's fine. But we've gone through this a couple times before, and like I asked the first question, I applaud the management of the city for getting an outside lawyer, and going through this and making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. We must, and this, whether we use this firm or another firm, we have to have, in my opinion, just an expert that can. My analogy would be, I believe, this is showing my confidence in myself too. I believe that if something happened on a medical, and I read a book and everything went perfectly, I followed page 1, page 2, I could do that, whatever they said, okay? But things don't go perfectly. We know there's going to be problems. We know everything isn't going to work. That's what we need the experts for. We need the experts to guide us. When problems arise, that's when you need the specialist. That's when you need the expert. I assume they've been there. They've done that. He alluded to a problem they had and they solved it. That's what we need. If we run into a problem 6 months, you're going to have to put everything on hold and find out how to solve that problem, okay? Two other times with software initiatives we've had, we ran into problems, and it cost us more money. It's a lot of money. I agree with that. But this is, I just don't think that we can even begin to think about doing this on our own without a consultant firm. Like I say, Barry Dunn, I don't know Barry Dunn. I would trust your belief system, and I'm sure you've checked on him. If he's fine, that's fine. But to go alone is I couldn't support going alone. We need an expert, and whether it be Barry Dunn or not, I don't know that. But
the question is on the approval of the ERP and HRIS vendor contracts. Those are the financial and human resource software contracts. After this is resolved, we will take up separately the implementation consultant contract. Okay? Does everybody understand the current question? Is there any further discussion on the adoption of the two software contracts? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. We are now considering, having a motion and a second, we are considering the approval of the implementation oversight contract to Barry Dunn. I'm saying that correctly, right? Okay. Further discussion on this motion. Councilor Fennessy.
I want to be abundantly clear that that my motion to separate these is in no way a belief that the finance committee finance team can do this on their own, nor would that be my desire, that we just throw them the software and read a couple manuals and then we'll be good, because it's I know how time consuming software adjustments like this can be. So in no way am I saying let's just try and tackle this on our own, and let's let Nick do the training sessions with the staff, because I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice by celebrating this new software that's going to bring more productivity, better on many different levels, and just expect them to learn this on their own. What I'm saying is, and I'm not even saying that let's not look to Barry Dunn. All I'm saying is this is a lot of money, and we're doing it without putting it out for bid. I don't know if Barry Dunn is the best company to come alongside our team and navigate these new waters. I don't know if they're the best to do that. I don't know if they're the cheapest. I don't know if they're the most expensive. I don't know if somebody else could do it just as effectively in half the hours. That's all I'm saying is I don't know, and I think we'd be missing a big opportunity to spend over $450,000 on a consultant that we haven't even looked at anyone else. I get it, they helped us along the way choose these, but I think we'd be missing a big opportunity either in someone else, a better price, a better platform, a better service, something. And if we go through that bidding process, we might find out that Barry Dunn still rises to the top, and then I'd have a lot more level of confidence to spend this kind of money. But right now, I don't know if this is wildly off or if it's right in line and it makes sense to do that. But I think we'd be missing an opportunity to just waive the bidding requirements because they helped us choose the software.
Before I ever allow a department head to bring a request to waive the bidding procedure, I give them some advice on the case they need to make. So I'll just ask the same questions that I typically ask in private before we get to the meeting. Director Reinhardt, what is your reasoning first for desiring to waive the bidding process, and why and how did you select Barry Dunn? Namely, did you review competitors?
Sure. So the competition actually starts back in the original proposals where we had the 5 consultants come in and look at them. Particularly, when we're examining those, Barry Dunn implementation process stood out on top. Barry Dunn's very organized. They're very methodical in what they're doing. Some companies weren't. Some companies were more scattered brain. And of course, they were less money. Overall, I think they presented the best product to me. Maybe these other vendors come back and do it better. But for the information I had, they were the best. We've contacted references based on this specific implementation material. The 3 references I talked to today, stunning reviews. They all very much needed Barry Dunn to get through the entire process. And even if we did go out to bid, and we did look through all the vendors, I feel like I'd be hard-pressed to even consider looking at another vendor just working with Barry Dunn and knowing how really good they are at this process.
And in terms of, so you're saying you want to waive the bidding process because you already consider them the best possible vendor to use. Are there any other reasons? Are there any timeliness issues?
Well, it would likely delay having somebody, on this for, I'm guessing, a month and a half, during those very important, crucial deadlines where we're, developing the basis of what we're going to get started with. Now they're going to come in to trying to play catch up as part of that process.
Councilor Allen.
Director, yeah, you already mentioned the one point I was going to bring up is Barry Dunn rose to the top when it came to choosing ERP software and the software that would work best for the city. And that was done, what, a couple of years now, correct?
2024.
A year ago, okay. I did hear they said that it was 25% off. That was the amount that was in the memo here for $462,000, or is it 25% off of that?
Nope, the 462,000 already reflected that discount.
Okay. Wanted to double check that.
And the other thing I want to point out to councilors too is this.
Just a minute,
Oops,
Director
sorry.
Ryan. I'll let Councilor Allen finish his question.
I believe when I spoke with you earlier there, did you have costs of other project managers? Did you have that information at all? Because I think you had alluded to the value and cost of Barry Dunn to others, or am I mistaken in that?
Yes. So within the proposals that we received, a lot of them did have range services, and this fell within that range. One of the problems they had, so we did ask for this during the original proposals for the implementation services. Without the vendor selection, the prices varied quite a bit depending on, which vendor you were going to work with, what kind of lift was going to be required, them not knowing the city at all. That's a big part of this too, and what the city can and can't handle as for, the lift on this project.
And and as they rose to the top last year, do you feel they've met or exceeded all your expectations working with them? So continuing on with them with the institutional knowledge that they've gained. I think you said that 4 or 6 people will still be on this project if you continue with that. Is that correct? Can you kind of explain that value?
Barry Dunn has absolutely blown my mind out of the water for any expectations they ever set with me. I have never met another principal on a phone call, such as Ryan. I call Ryan, he answers his phone anytime. Any of his other consultants that I've worked with, any of his team under him, answer his phone anytime. I've never worked with consultants this great. And I do want to point out, we had one of their consultants here for a whole week with us, and she gave that same level of service any second she could to call clients back and work with them. I have never worked with a consulting firm that has more professionalism than I've ever seen with Barry Dunn. I don't know if that answered your entire question, but
no, it gave a good feel. Just again, waiving the bidding process for such a high amount, there needs to be a real good reason for it, and that having that value of institutional knowledge that you guys are working together, you could putting it out to bid. You may be able to save some money, but then as you experienced in the first round, that quality may be impacted, and then are they really helping? And I don't know. I think Councilor Fennessy brought it up, the alternatives. Like, what if we hired a couple, 2-3 people? Like, maybe Barry Dunn could elaborate on that, but what value are we getting versus hiring a couple of people just for a year to see through this project? Because, I know on a technical level, there's only so much a couple people can handle in terms of what they know. So having a team, I think, would be valuable.
Those couple of people are going to replace me on the finance team. I would dedicate full time to the ERP project is how I would see that going. Just considering, the pool of people we have within this area and the extent of people who have worked with a project like this, I don't think there's a lot. And I can't say I've ever worked with a project to this extent, but I have worked through implementation and IT projects before.
Director Reiner, can you answer a couple clarifying questions for me to make sure I and the council understands this? Barry Dunn has been our selection consultant. We hired them to help us select these softwares.
Correct.
And when we hired them, did we do so via a bidding process?
Yes.
In that bidding process, was part of the scope or an add-on or an optional service the implementation service we're discussing now?
Yes.
Did other bidders offer their prices and ability to perform the implementation services during that bidding process?
Not all of them provided, but I would say 3 of the 5 provided.
But Barry Dunn definitely did.
Yes.
And this, how did this proposal that we are debating right now compare to those other proposals that were submitted in the bids?
This was in the scope of those proposals.
Thank you. Are there other questions or other questions? Discussion. Councilor Sweeney.
Take me through the normal bidding process if this, and I'm a believer in the bidding process myself, but I understand on occasion there are times when we can't. But in the rules, the guidelines, we don't have to accept the low bid. Is that
With some exceptions, that is correct, yes.
okay? So, and this firm has already indicated to us the price, okay? That would, if I were this company, that would bother me, putting out, we didn't tell them that, okay? They gave us 25%, whatever it was. So I have a problem with it going to bid once we've told one of the main company we're dealing with now that we expected, well, he expected that we would pass this. And so I understand that. As long as the provision exists that we do not have to accept the low bid, which normally we do, but there are circumstances, okay? And I don't know if this company would rise to the top, as you alluded to, but you speak highly of them, far higher than I think you probably anticipated when you started dealing with them, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I'm conflicted on this, really, to be honest with you, but I would like to hear I have some questions for the company, if you don't mind, and then I will not put on my mic again.
You can go ahead and ask those now, Councilor.
Is the gentleman there with?
Mr. Doyle, you are prepared to answer questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Doyle, I've got a couple of questions about your firm. Can you tell me or explain to me the depth and length of your management team? If the person, I don't know if you'll be dealing with us, assuming the contract goes your way, if you're the person we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, or there's something there, what depth of management skill do you have for this particular project, and how long have you been in business in this particular field?
Yeah, absolutely. So the firm itself has been around. We're in our 51st year. In terms of working with local government entities, we've been doing that for 38 years. We have worked with over 900 total government clients. 600 of those have been local government entities. In terms of ERP planning, so this type of project, assessing the current environment, selecting new software systems, and then going through the implementation process, that is the core focus of what my team does day in and day out. So we do not work with commercial clients, higher education, or private sector. My team exclusively works with cities, towns, and counties across the United States. At present, I manage a team. I believe we're engaged, my direct team, in over a dozen similar implementation projects of ERP systems right now. For every engagement that I oversee as a principal, I always maintain a clear line of communication as a sponsor for the project and get involved as necessary on the day-to-day process. We also leverage a project manager that, with the scope of services the city requested in its initial RFP, and after getting to know the city a little bit more and understanding where some of the needs are, we would expect to dedicate one of our team members about 90% of the time to the city's project. So about 30 to 32 hours of their week in a given week would be dedicated to the City of Superior's project. Beyond that, we have a pool of approximately 400 other consultants on our team that we pull on. So if we get into a unique area of needs, say Nick has some detailed questions related to project accounting or grant management processes, it is perfectly within our scope of services to the city to bring in additional resources from our team that have a depth of knowledge that would help best support the city through the decision-making processes. So to some of the questions of what's the trade-off of hiring 2 people full-time to work within the city versus a consulting firm such as Barry Dunn, you get the white glove service and the attention of a boutique firm in the day-to-day operations, but the resources of a large firm to be able to support where those unique and nuanced needs may arise throughout the course of the project.
One final question. Your company is not up for merger. It's not for sale. It's not being bought out by a larger firm at this time?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Question is on the adoption, the approval of the Barry Dunn contract, which would waive the bidding requirements. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the contract, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The motion carries. Do we have any business by public? No one signed up. We have no business by public and no further business then. Councilors, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season, and I will see you in the new year. We are adjourned.